Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Boy, it's been a busy week, not only here in Mexico, but also in the international realm. The role Mexico plays in the world is being questioned once again, particularly because, as you know, throughout the decades, I would even say since the Cuban Revolution, there's always been this question mark about Mexico's relationship with Cuba. And now, this week, there's been a lot of question marks about Mexico's relationships, President Claudia Sheinbaum's relationship with not only the Cuban government, but Venezuela and Nicaragua. Why? Well, at the beginning of the week, she made an announcement that she was not going to go to the Summit of the Americas that's taking place the first week in December in Santo Domingo, in part because, and she publicly stated that she does not want to, that she would not go in support of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, who were not invited to the Summit of the Americas. And I also would like to highlight that Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, said the exact thing, that he was not going to go to the Summit of the Americas. So that raised a series of questions of, I can understand her not going because there's a lot going on here in Mexico, but she specifically said that she was not going because these three countries were not invited. Then about a couple days ago, Congressman Carlos Jimenez, who is a congressman from, it's a U.S. congressman from the state of Florida, came out with this very serious statements about this link between the Mexican government and the Cuban government, and basically saying that for those countries that have this type of relationship, the United States would treat these countries like they would treat Mexico in this case as a pariah, as the way they treat Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, which is a very strong statement. And he also recognized that we're in the process of negotiating the USMCA. The Mexican ambassador in the United States came out and said, Congressman, Mexico acts based on its traditional principles of foreign policy, which are enshrined in our Constitution. And he basically said that you can't treat Mexico as a pariah country, runs in counter to what close cooperation that have existed between both nations since because we're neighbors, and the fact that Mexico is the U.S. main trading partner with an annual trade reaching $860 billion in 2024. Well, Carlos Jimenez came out and said, went and responded to this comment by Ambassador Moctezuma, saying that Mexico clearly values its pathetic support for a narco-terrorist dictatorship in Cuba and Venezuela more than the billion-dollar relationship with the U.S. We will not stand by while your government actively undermines America's security policy. So all of this kind of raises a question as to, well, what is Mexico's policy or Mexico's relationship with Cuba at this point? And this week, our friends at this extraordinary NGO, I strongly recommend you read their reports, Mexicans Against Corruption. They've been joining us throughout the years. They published a really interesting report in regards to the amount of petroleum that we believe, oil, that Mexico is pretty much giving away, at least it's our understanding, to the island right now. To talk about this report and to put into context how big this support is for the island, joining us is Leonardo Nuñez Gonzalez. He's the director of applied research for Mexicans Against Corruption. Welcome to the show, Leonardo. Just give us the information, just the raw data. How much is Mexico or the Mexican government supporting Cuba at a point where we believe Cuba is going through an economic crisis and needs this support? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ana Maria. Well, pretty much as you say, it's not new, the relationship between Mexico and these dictatorial regimes. But what is new is that over the past year, Mexico has quickly become a key supplier of oil to Cuba. And this is through shipments that right now are three times more high than the last year. And the estimate is that the worth of this shipment is around $3 billion of subsidized fuel given to Cuba via our public companies. So we have the data of the specific tankers that were operated, and there are some very mysterious or very distinctive ones, like the Sandino tanker that was sanctioned previously by the OFAC, by the U.S. OFAC blacklist. It was part of it, and we have the maps of this ship carrying fuel from Tamaulipas, from Veracruz, and taking it to La Habana during the last months. And this is something very usual in Cuba. If we remember that it used to be a very common like scheme from Venezuela to Cuba. They used to give a lot of fuel to the island. Now Mexico is taking that part, and the amount of money is extreme, because $3 billion is pretty much the same amount of money that we will spend the next year in our in our security. In the Secretary of Security, that is headed by Garcia Harfuch, it's exactly the same amount of money that they will spend in 1 year. It's the same amount of money that we give to the island of Cuba in the last months, only in the last months. And this is like also connected with another interesting case related with the U.S., because Tamaulipas, that is one of the port where is used to export the fuel to Cuba, is not just a geographic detail. Federal operations that have uncovered millions of liters of illicit diesel, that is called Huachicol Fiscal, are
Mhm.
also important through that port. So this is an international problem, because the Huachicol Fiscal, that is another big problem. The amount of money that the Mexican government has lost for that scheme is immense. It's around 60,000 million pesos, 60,000 billion. That is
Mhm.
around $30 billion. That's like the precise amount of money is $30 billion. That pretty much as comparison is like the same amount of budget that the USAID agency had for all their operations every single year. So that amount of money has been lost for the Mexican government and is in the hands of the cartel. We need to remember that that scandal involves the Navy and the familiars of the head of the Navy at that moment with Lopez Obrador. So there are two different scandals that are connected to the same port. And the question is pretty much like you say, like we are not rich. We don't have.
Right.
We have a lack of money and investment in a lot of with a lot of problems here in
In the
Mexico.
health sector, I mean, just thinking about what's happening in the health sector. So, what is, and I really appreciate you joining us today on Living in Mexico, Fernando Leonardo Nuñez Gonzalez from Mexicans Against Corruption. One last question. I mean, what 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 is the justification? Do we have any? Do we understand how um, the government is justifying the support? I mean, Cuba clearly needs the help right now because there's all indications that Cuba is going through a very serious economic crisis that up until recently was expressed in an enormous amount of Cubans leaving the island, pushed out of the island literally, and most of them trying to head towards the United States. Now, with Donald Trump's new deportation an immigration strategy, that is no longer an option. So that is going to be another report as to how many of these Cubans are staying in Mexico. But what is the Mexico's justification for that? I mean, there's other programs, like you said, there's the doctors, the Cuban doctors, and there's other ways that Mexico supports Cuba with master programs that are being paid, or specialization of Mexican doctors in Cuba. I mean, I know clearly Mexico wants to help Cuba. Do we understand what the justification is?
Well, the public justification is that this is humanitarian aid.
Right,
Claudia Sheinbaum always say that, but we cannot forget that uh, even from Lopez Obrador, they call the relationship with Cuba a special vinculum, special
right. Special
relationship.
relationship.
Do you remember? Do you remember that we invite the president to the Independence Day parade?
Right.
So even from there, like the ideological affinity is obviously part of the equation,
Mhm.
and also the protection because we cannot forget that the last years Cuba faced a lot of public demonstrations against the
Right.
government, and well, the Mexican government protected and defended the government, take the side of the government, not the people. And this is also because it's a way to protect themselves and to have a strategic ally that is very useful, well, for them, but it's also very, very hard to understand it in their relationship with the US. But it's because they need it and it's helpful for the Mexican government also because we don't know what's happening with our money when it's in the island. So
Right.
that's also part of the mystery of that because there is no transparency in Cuba. There is no we know this because of the journalism, not because there is in like the public debate. So
Right.
we don't know what's happening with our money, but we know that our money is given to the government, not to the people, to the government of the Cuba, of Cuba.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us, Leonardo Nuñez Gonzalez from Mexico's Mexicans Against Corruption. He's the director of applied research. I really appreciate you joining. I really, really appreciate you joining us because actually, this money that is being provided to the Cuban government is also linked to this horrendous scandal, what you call fiscal, this evading of taxes with the importation of oil from the United States. So, which is also, I know, a case that we're following very closely. So, hopefully, you'll come back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Living in Mexico.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Thank you. We're going to go to commercial break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar, and you're watching and listening to Living in Mexico. Don't go away.